Think California is still a safe place to buy a home in 2026? You might want to pause before signing anything. Behind the sunsets, palm trees, and glossy listings, the numbers tell a different story. In city after city, the cost of owning a home has broken away from reality. Prices hover near record highs, incomes are lagging, insurance is climbing, climate risk is spreading, and more neighborhoods feel less like communities and more like financial traps. This is not just about pricey zip codes, it's about fragile markets, places where one job loss, one storm, one insurance renewal, or one rate shock can push a household from barely managing into full crisis. In 2026, some California cities are especially dangerous places to buy, no matter how perfect they look in photos. If you are even thinking about buying in California this year, do one thing for your future self. Hit subscribe right now so you do not walk into a market that's already starting to crack. Today we're counting down the top 10 worst cities to buy a house in California in 2026. Some are world famous, some look like beach paradise. Others are quiet coastal or desert towns that investors hyped during the last boom. All of them share one truth. The risk you take on as a buyer is bigger than the dream you're being sold. Stay to the end, because the number one city is still being marketed as an opportunity, but underneath, the math tells a very different story. Let's dive in. Number 10. Los Angeles. Los Angeles still sells a powerful fantasy. Red carpets, studio lights, neighborhoods that appear in movies and music videos. But in 2026, owning a home here feels less like a dream and more like a long-term squeeze on your budget. The basic problem is simple. Prices never truly reset after the last run-up, but everyday incomes did not leap into a new universe. Mortgage payments on even a fairly modest house can easily swallow a huge portion of a typical family paycheck once you add taxes and insurance. And that is before you consider repairs, utilities, and the cost of simply existing in a city where almost everything is marked up. For many would-be owners, renting and waiting now makes more mathematical sense than buying into this peak. That is especially true in neighborhoods where condo fees and special assessments pile on top of already heavy monthly payments. Downtown towers and older buildings in central areas may look impressive, but behind the glass, there are owners quietly wondering if they bought at the wrong point in the cycle. At the same time, Los Angeles is still losing residents to other states and smaller metros. People with mobile jobs are quietly leaving for places where their housing dollar stretches further. That slow outward flow does not crash prices overnight, but it chips away at demand and confidence. It also changes who is left competing for homes, shifting the market toward investors and higher-earning buyers, while middle-income families step aside. Layer on top the growing cost of risk. Many parts of the county face wildfire exposure, flood zones, or aging infrastructure. Insurance renewals are a rude surprise for a lot of owners, and some buyers discover that the coverage they want is either extremely expensive or simply unavailable. You can love the weather and still hate the feeling that a single disaster could wreck your balance sheet. Los Angeles still has jobs, culture, and momentum, but if you were looking at a purchase here in 2026, you're not paying for safety, you're paying for a lifestyle while accepting serious financial and environmental risk. That combination earns it a spot on this list. Number 9. Oakland. Oakland has always been complicated in the best and worst ways. Creative energy, deep community roots, incredible views of the bay. For a long time, it was framed as the slightly more attainable alternative to San Francisco. In 2026, that story is flipped. Prices are still high relative to local incomes, but the stability that used to justify those prices is badly shaken. Many neighborhoods are caught in a stressful middle zone, not cheap enough to be a bargain and not stable enough to feel like a safe long-term bet. Crime and public safety concerns continue to weigh heavily on buyer psychology. You can run all the spreadsheets you want, but if would-be owners do not feel secure walking from their front door to their car at night, they hesitate. That hesitation shows up as longer days on market, deeper price cuts, and sellers quietly accepting less than they hoped. Even buyers who love Oakland's culture often end up choosing nearby suburbs that feel a little calmer. On the financial side, ownership costs keep creeping higher. Property taxes, special assessments, and rising insurance premiums in both hillside and flatland areas push the true monthly spend well above what online calculators suggest. Older homes frequently need significant upgrades to meet safety codes or insurance requirements, which adds another layer of risk for stretched buyers. Insurance and climate risk are also creeping into the conversation. Hillside areas look beautiful, but they carry fire danger and higher premiums. Some flatland districts face aging infrastructure and flooding concerns. As lenders and insurers get more cautious, buyers end up with more complicated loan conditions and sometimes bigger monthly costs than they expected. There is still a powerful culture in Oakland, in serious upside if the city stabilizes. But that is the key word: if. Right now, you're paying big city prices while taking on serious uncertainty about safety, services, and future demand. For most homebuyers in 2026, that is a gamble, not a smart move. Number 8. San Bernardino. San Bernardino does not show up on glossy postcards, but for years it was pitched as the affordable way into Southern California homeownership. Close to freeways, within reach of Los Angeles and Inland Empire jobs, bigger houses for less money than the coast. On paper, it looked like a deal. In 2026, that deal looks fragile. Home prices jumped during the last boom as buyers priced out of coastal counties pushed inland. Investors bought single-family homes and small rentals, expecting appreciation and rent growth, but local incomes did not keep up. Many families who live and work here now stare at prices and payments that feel disconnected from what they earn. The stress shows up quickly. More listings sit on the market longer than sellers expected. Price cuts are common as owners test a high number, then walk it down to chase the remaining buyers. Early distress signs are appearing, especially for households hit by higher adjustable rate payments or rising costs across their budget. A missed paycheck or medical bill can tip a stretched owner into trouble. San Bernardino also carries perception and safety challenges. Crime and public safety worries weigh heavily on families deciding where to put down roots. Even where conditions improve, reputation lags reality. Many buyers keep driving until they reach a place that feels safer, even if it means a longer commute. That hesitation reduces demand and weakens price support. Climate and infrastructure risk add another layer. Summers are hot, pushing utility bills higher in older, less efficient homes. Some neighborhoods face flood or wildfire exposure, forcing insurers to respond with higher premiums, stricter conditions, or fewer options. For buyers already at the edge of what they can afford, those extra monthly costs can turn a borderline purchase into a bad decision. Buying in San Bernardino in 2026 might look affordable compared to Los Angeles or Orange County, but you are stepping into a market where many locals are stretched, where utilities and insurance bite hard, and where safety and perception drag on value. That combination makes it one of the worst places to treat a house as a sure bet right now. Number 7. San Diego. San Diego looks like it should be the safest housing market on Earth. Perfect weather, beaches, major universities, a strong military and biotech presence. On camera, it plays like a permanent postcard. The trouble is that postcard pricing collided with real-world budgets. In 2026, buying an average home in San Diego still requires an income that is anything but average. Many would-be owners find that even with a decent salary, the monthly payment plus taxes plus insurance pushes them into a level of housing cost that financial planners would call dangerous. Renting, while not cheap, often looks less risky. For a lot of families, the choice is not between buying and renting in San Diego, it is between renting here or owning somewhere else entirely. Climate and insurance concerns add another layer. Coastal erosion, wildfire risk in inland canyons, and stronger storms all feed into insurance quotes that are higher and more complicated than they were a decade ago. Some buyers discover that the home they love comes with an insurance bill that feels like a second mortgage. Others are told that only limited or state-backed coverage is available, which raises real questions about what happens after the next disaster. That is a different kind of stress than just watching a high mortgage payment leave your account every month. Meanwhile, certain parts of the market are showing visible fatigue. High-end condos that were built for investors and second home buyers are not clearing as quickly. Sellers who expected bidding wars are settling for negotiated discounts. The days when anything with an ocean glimpse would sell instantly are fading. In some inland suburbs, you see more back-on-market signs as buyers get cold feet once they see the true monthly costs in writing. San Diego will almost certainly remain desirable. The question is whether buying in 2026 gives you a margin of safety or locks you into a payment that only works if everything goes right. For many families, that is too thin a line, and that is why this city belongs on a list of places to be very careful about. If you want this kind of nuance and not just hype, remember to subscribe to Discover the Nation. We have more California reality coming. Number 6. Burbank. Burbank has long been marketed as the cozy side of the entertainment industry. Quiet streets, studio lots just down the road, a sense of safety compared to some parts of Los Angeles. That mix turned it into one of the most aggressively priced suburban markets in Southern California. By 2026, the bill for that reputation has come due. Entry-level homes in Burbank often carry price tags that would qualify as luxury in other states. Even small, older houses command numbers that force buyers into very high leverage in very long time horizons. Once you add rising property taxes and insurance costs driven by heat and fire risk in surrounding hills, the true monthly outlay becomes shocking. Owners are not just paying for a roof, they are paying for location, brand, and industry proximity every single month. The buyer pool here is also changing. Some studio and media jobs that once felt untouchable have been hit by strikes, restructuring, and the shift to streaming. Creative professionals who once stretched to buy in Burbank are suddenly more cautious. They have seen how volatile their industry can be, and that reduces their willingness to gamble on a giant mortgage. Lenders are watching that volatility too, tightening standards for borrowers whose paychecks rise and fall with each production cycle. You can still walk through Burbank and see tree-lined streets and families pushing strollers, but look closer at the real estate listings and you see houses sitting longer, staged again and again with small price reductions stacking up. Some sellers offer credits for outdated systems, seismic retrofits, or aging roofs that need attention. The sense that you had to grab anything immediately or lose it forever is fading, replaced by a quieter negotiation between fear of missing out and fear of overpaying. For buyers, that should be a warning. You are entering a city where the premium is based mostly on past image, not on current value. Unless prices adjust further, Burbank in 2026 is one of the riskiest places to lock in a 30-year commitment. If you want more city-by-city breakdowns that are honest about risk, hit subscribe to Discover the Nation so you're not relying on real estate marketing to guide your decisions. Number 5. Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz feels like a dream. Cliffs over the Pacific, redwoods nearby, a surfer and college town vibe that never quite fits into any neat category. That is exactly why buyers fell in love with it during the remote work boom. The problem is that the dream got priced as if everyone who ever wanted to live there could afford to do so at the same time. Housing costs in Santa Cruz climbed far beyond what local wages support. Many households that make good money on paper still cannot comfortably handle the total cost of ownership once mortgage, taxes, and insurance are stacked. It is one of those cities where you can be considered successful and still feel permanently stretched. People talk about being house rich and life poor, cutting back on everything else just to stay in the zip code. Climate risk is not abstract here. Parts of the coast face erosion, flooding, and storm surge concerns, while forested areas face fire danger. Insurance companies notice. Premiums and deductibles reflect that risk, and in some cases, carriers simply decide they do not want the exposure at all. That turns some dream homes into financial landmines. Buyers find out late in the process that coverage will be limited, extremely expensive, or dependent on state backstop programs that can change over time. You can already see buyer fatigue in longer days on market and more frequent price reductions. Investors who chased vacation rentals are rerunning their numbers and realizing that higher financing costs and stricter local rules have cut deeply into profit margins. Some are trying to exit, but the buyer at the other end of that trade is harder to find. Younger families who once considered Santa Cruz their forever destination are quietly shifting inland, where the commute is longer, but the math makes more sense. For all its beauty, Santa Cruz in 2026 is a place where you are asked to take on coastal risk, pay a massive premium, and hope that the remote work wave that pushed prices up does not unwind further. That is a lot to bet on one postcard view. If you want to separate lifestyle fantasy from financial reality, make sure you are subscribed to Discover the Nation. We are not done with California yet. Number 4. Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is one of the most photographed cities in California. Spanish-style architecture, palm-lined streets, ocean on one side and mountains on the other. It looks and feels like a luxury resort that someone turned into a town. For a long time, the mantra was simple. If you could afford it, you could not go wrong buying here. In 2026, that mindset is finally being tested. Prices remain incredibly high, especially relative to incomes generated by the local service, tourism, and education economy. Even many professionals feel that buying means committing to a level of housing cost that will dominate every other financial decision for years. Vacations, retirement savings, college plans for kids all get pushed behind the mortgage. When that happens, your home stops feeling like security and starts feeling like a permanent obligation that owns you back. Risk factors are also piling up. Wildfire danger in the foothills, mudslides when heavy rains hit burned slopes, and water scarcity all push operating costs higher. Insurance companies are increasingly selective, and some owners are forced into last resort coverage that is both expensive and limited. Deductibles climb, exclusions get broader, and buyers realize that one bad event could erase years of financial progress, even if they technically have a policy. At the same time, Santa Barbara is quietly losing some of the workers and families that give it life. Service employees, teachers, medical staff, and younger residents are leaving for inland communities where they can actually imagine owning something. School enrollments soften, local businesses struggle to keep stable staff. That slow hollowing out does not destroy a market overnight, but it chips away at the foundation that makes a place feel like a living community rather than a backdrop for visitors. If you buy in Santa Barbara in 2026, you're not just paying for charm, you're accepting serious environmental risk, a heavy financial load, and a shrinking margin for error in a town that depends on people who increasingly cannot afford to stay. For buyers looking for value as well as beauty, this is one of the worst places to jump in right now. Number 3. Palm Springs. Palm Springs built its reputation as an escape. Clear desert light, pools, golf courses, mid-century modern homes that look like they were designed for magazine spreads. In the last decade, it also became one of the hottest second home and vacation rental markets in the state. That combination has now turned against it. In Palm Springs, in the wider Coachella Valley, extreme heat is no longer a rare headline. Summers are longer and hotter, and utility bills for air conditioning can be brutal. Owners talk about power bills that rival a car payment for several months out of the year. Water restrictions and higher costs are a constant background concern. Lawns are replaced with gravel, not always because people want to, but because they cannot afford to waste a single gallon. All of that eats into the lifestyle that buyers thought they were purchasing. On the financial side, the surge in investor activity created a large pool of homes that only made sense if rental income stayed strong and financing remained cheap. Neither of those assumptions holds in 2026.
Mortgages are more expensive, local rules for vacation rentals are tighter in many neighborhoods, and tourism is no longer growing in a straight line. Some months look strong, others fall flat, and revenue feels less predictable than it once did. You can see the result in long lists of very similar homes on the market at the same time. Many of them were renovated with the same aesthetic and the same goal in mind: polished concrete floors, white walls, bright furniture, and a pool out back. When everyone tries to sell the same product to a smaller group of buyers, discounts follow. Behind the scenes, some owners are already quietly cutting weekend rates and still struggling to fill calendars. Palm Springs is still fun to visit, but owning there now means betting against a trend of rising heat, rising insurance costs, and rising doubts about whether the vacation rental model can carry an entire housing market. That is a tough bet in 2026, especially if you're the one holding the keys when the next long hot summer arrives.
Number 2. San Jose. Now we move into the heart of Silicon Valley, to San Jose, a city that once felt like the safest housing bet in California. Tech campuses, glass office towers, endless suburban neighborhoods filled with people who believed their stock grants would always go up. That belief is exactly what pushed home prices into the stratosphere. During the last cycle, buyers treated San Jose real estate as a direct extension of tech growth. Every new round of funding, every IPO, every wave of hiring was assumed to justify another jump in prices. By 2026, many neighborhoods are still carrying those peak-era price tags, but the tech world underneath them has changed. Layoffs, hiring freezes, remote work shifts, and relocation of teams to cheaper states have all chipped away at the old certainty. The result is a market that looks strong on the surface and fragile underneath. Median home values remain extremely high, often deep into the 7-figure range, while even solid 6-figure incomes feel squeezed once you factor in mortgage payments, taxes, insurance, and the general cost of daily life in the Bay Area. Stock-based compensation that once made those numbers feel manageable is less reliable. Some buyers who stretched in the boom are now watching their equity wobble as prices flatten or quietly drift down. Risk shows up in smaller ways, too. Older suburban tracts need expensive updates. Commutes are no longer guaranteed to be worth the trade when some companies are quietly shifting key roles to Austin, Seattle, or entirely remote teams. Insurance and utility costs continue to rise. Families who thought they were buying stability ask themselves an uncomfortable question: if my job moved or changed, could I really carry this house for long? On the sales side, you can see the hesitation. Homes that once sparked bidding wars are now taking longer to move. Price reductions are more common, especially for properties that do not check every single box. Investors who bought with the idea of renting to well-paid tech tenants are rechecking their math as some renters leave, double up, or negotiate harder. Number 1. San Francisco. We finish where California's modern housing story really exploded. San Francisco. This city defined an era of tech wealth, astronomical price growth, in the belief that demand here would never truly fade. For years, buying a home in San Francisco was framed as the ultimate power move. In 2026, that narrative has cracked. Home prices are still extremely high, but the forces that supported them have shifted. Tech layoffs, companies pushing more employees back to physical offices in other locations, and several years of out-migration have all reduced the frenzy. Many units that would have sparked bidding wars in the past now sit on the market, circling through small price cuts as sellers test what buyers will tolerate. Investors who once assumed endless appreciation are suddenly talking about cash flow, vacancy, and risk in a much more cautious tone. At the same time, the cost of ownership has climbed on multiple fronts. Property taxes on big-ticket homes are significant all by themselves. Add association fees on many condos, higher insurance premiums for fire and earthquake risk, and maintenance on aging buildings with complex systems, and you start to see why even high earners are cautious. One unexpected special assessment or major repair can turn an already heavy payment into something overwhelming. Quality of life concerns amplify the financial questions. Some neighborhoods still struggle with visible homelessness, property crime, and basic cleanliness. Transit systems face funding gaps and service cuts. Families thinking about long-term routes weigh those realities against the price tag and often decide to look across the bay or out of the region entirely. That gradual shift in preference chips away at the idea that San Francisco is an automatic forever destination. San Francisco still has world-class employers, universities, and cultural depths. The views are real, the history is real, and the talent base is still strong. But buying a house here in 2026 means accepting a combination of high cost, social strain, and uncertain demand. The upside looks smaller than it did 10 years ago, and the downside looks much more real. That is why San Francisco takes the #1 spot on our list of the worst cities to buy a house in California right now.